How do we humans make sense of the world? As a documentary filmmaker, I was trained to make sense by looking for the telling image. And I found one hiding in plain sight. It was shape itself. Once I looked for shape, I saw it everywhere, in shelters, social systems, sacred sites. Shapes frame the way we see the world. They're a mental map. They organize and orient us. But over time, shapes shift. And when they do, it signals that a new way of living and a new way of thinking has entered. So let's go on a ride through time, watching when the shapes shift. Shape first popped out for me when I filmed a tribal ritual in Liberia. Women danced in a circle in the hub of their circular settlement, and they were surrounded by round thatched huts. It struck me that here, the shape hiding in plain sight was a web, circular and interwoven. And then I realized tribal cultures all over the world had the web as their mental map, circular and interconnected. And you could see it in their shelters in every continent. There were the round grass-thatched huts. There were the spheres of bent timber. Some were domes of straw and mud, some made of ice that you're familiar with, and some of mammoth bones that you've probably never seen before. Sacred sites also give us an image of how they were thinking like a web. You can see it in labyrinths, in circular stones that we know as Stonehenge and thousands of others around the world. They were in medicine wheels of the American Indians and concentric circles of the Australian Aborigines. In the Amazon, they lived huddled in the rainforest, tightly woven to each other and to nature. Even language embeds the web mindset. In the Dagara tribe of Africa, there was no word for you. A word as simple and basic as the difference between you and me did not exist. But the closest translation they had for our word for you meant my other self. Imagine living in a world where the other is you. And how can a world built on the eternal circle of nature possibly change? But it did. The day after I filmed that tribal ceremony, I filmed in Monrovia, Liberia's capital. And here I saw soldiers lined row by row, perfect pods, marching like graph paper being turned. And there were generals lined in a straight row, reviewing the troops. And it struck me that here, the shape hiding in plain sight was a ladder. Organized, hierarchy, based on measurements. In a ladder, every rung is higher or lower than another. Things don't count if they can't be counted. It's a world of right, wrong, yes, no, win, lose. And this mindset spread across the world, the ladder thinking. You know it in pyramids of Egypt that you're familiar with, pointing to a sun god. But it also popped up in Central America. Here, it's the same triangle, but it had rounded sides. And in Asia, it was different ornamentation, dedicated to a different god, but still pointed up. Church steeples eventually replaced the stone circles. So even God was kicked upstairs, an authority above, in the heavens, out of reach, no longer a spirit inside the stone circles. This latter mindset spread across the world and eventually came to skyscrapers in every major city around the globe. Today, some of those skyscrapers are so high, they look down at the clouds. The shift from the web to the ladder mindset really struck me when I filmed in Abu Dhabi in 1969. Then it was just a tribal sheikdom catapulting to the modern world. And Sheikh Zayed, their leader, came over and asked me, "Will you tell this from your head or from your heart?" My answer was, "Both, I hope." But his question was more important than my answer. He was leading his people from a time of qualities to quantities, from meaning to metrics. He had to guide his people from nomadic tents to global tentacles. Our mental maps permeate even science. You probably learned the periodic table of elements as a grid. But think about this. This same sequence of elements can also be drawn as a helix, as loops, or a spinning donut called a torus. Nature does not change. The map in our mind changes. And how we describe the world inscribes our thinking. So what shape describes today? Networks are our mental map. This is a picture of one website connecting to 10,000 websites. It looks like the Big Bang. You know networks are made of links and nodes, and you know they're full of reverberations. But you don't know the outcome of those reverberations. So in a network, both pattern and the unpredictable are both at play. And the internet is the master of our lives today. Banking, shopping, socializing, information. But we even apply that map to biology. This is how we map neurons in our brain as networks. And these are pictures of bacteria colonizing. It's a wild variety of different formations, but they're all network formations. The current generation even thinks by hyperlinks, associative thinking, no longer linear logic. And when we change our mental maps, we change our thinking. When I was in China, a military official asked me my view of the American-Chinese relationship. My answer was, chopsticks. It takes two forces in careful balance to feed yourself and feed your country. We're so used to seeing the world as opposing forces, but if we expand our lens, we can see them as common purpose in balance. The picture of Earth from space gives us that enlarged image. It too has messy, chaotic systems, weather patterns, ocean currents. But you know that overall, nature's systems are in balance, like eating with chopsticks. So we've gone from a woven web to a linear ladder to a reverberating network. What's next? What can hold differences, diversity, dynamic change, the way that nature itself does? There's a hotel in China built as an upright ring, upending expectations. It's full of opposites. The two sides actually connect underwater, so it's both above water and below water. Its interior rooms have exterior views. And if you wandered inside, your perspective would continuously change. Living in new shapes reshapes our thinking. When you enlarge your lens, what look like opposites snap to one elegant whole. And nature invented this shape long before our buildings. It's the shape of the magnetic field around our body. It's the shape of the magnetic field around Earth itself. It's called a torus, like a spinning donut. Some physicists think that the universe itself could be a spinning donut. So picture yourself bursting out of the center. You might experience an expanding universe. But now think of yourself coming in, folding into the center from the opposite side. You might experience it as a contracting universe. Simultaneously, it expands and contracts, holding opposites in a larger system. So the trick of our time is to enlarge our lens, multiply perspectives, include opposites, and when you do, what look like chaos becomes pattern. What look like opposing forces becomes balance, and the blur of accelerated change snaps to the beauty of the big picture. So start to see wind shape shift, and you may catch the future in the next telling image. Thank you very much.